everyone. This is Nick with Tenacity.ai with my co-host Jason, and you're listening to the Cloud Cost Optimization Podcast. Today, we're going to dive into a series that you're going to hear over the coming episodes, really focused, on FinOps, on what's going on inside of the market, what's going on inside of technology organizations. That has a lot to do with cloud spending and understanding the changes that have happened in procurement and in finance over the past couple of years. If you look at Google Trend data, it's really interesting. Jason, we just looked at this yesterday. It's really interesting to see how the term FinOps, just from a Google perspective, folks Googling FinOps, has just blown up tremendously over the past really kind of 12 to 24 months. And how previously it sort of saw this transition from thinking about, cloud cost management, cloud optimization, and FinOps far outpaces that from kind of an inquiry perspective from looking at the Google Trend data. I guess first, what are your thoughts on this trend and why it has emerged inside of organizations and why it's now such a popular topic? We're seeing podcasts, we're seeing blog posts, we're seeing books on FinOps. It's very reminiscent to me of the early days of Agile. Why is this happening?
I think the shift of, from CAPEX to OPEX, which has been happening for a very long time.
In cloud spending.
In cloud spending, right.
Technology.
And compute and, compute spend, right. Compute, disk, storage type of spending, right. Historically companies would procure, servers and storage and things like that, bring them into their data centers. That was all CAPEX. As companies have moved and shifted towards the cloud, which is variable-based spending, there are a lot of problems that come as a result of the shift from CAPEX to OPEX that organizations are facing. And then, as companies have shifted to the cloud, they've been doing it at a very rapid pace if you look at the industry in general, but more at a more steady clip before the pandemic. And then over the pandemic, cloud usage just skyrocketed. AWS's operating profit doubled just over the pandemic years. And so organizations pushed as much as they could into the cloud because that's all they could do to support getting people work from home and all these other things. And, now they've got to rein that spending in and they don't know how.
You and I speak in terms of the big change, like, innovation and technology, changes in culture happen because something big happened. And I think we have two things here to talk about, and I'm not sure which one's the actual big change, because I feel like the transition to cloud and the transition out of CAPEX into variable spending has been going on since 2008. And so it's this long burn over 15 years. And I don't know if that's the big change, like that's hit the velocity in the past 5 years that it created the big change, or if it was the pandemic shift to work from home and it forced organizations to think about cloud and about the services that they could run or rapidly stand up in order to respond to the change in the world.
I think it's probably a combination of both, but I do think that a lot of organizations during the pandemic, because they did what you just articulated, even the organizations that maybe at an organization level didn't recognize the real value of the cloud, but everyone knew when the pandemic hit, there is real value in being able to do all of this immediately. And so, I think that could have, you're right, there was a slow shift. It was growing at a clip, right? People moving into the cloud, but I agree with you, the pandemic accelerated it to an exponential level. So, the interesting question would be like, let's say, cloud adoption before the pandemic was, a 10% of what it really was in 2019, right? Like, let's say it was super slow, right? We were in the beginning of it. how much would have moved to the cloud over the pandemic if the adoption wasn't where it was. I don't know. But I think it's a combination of both. People were already planning on going. There were people still in the organization that were probably holding back some of the migrations to the cloud, and once the pandemic hit, they were no longer able to sustain that level of holding things back.
Yeah, so you and I both run large scale budgets for technology. In fact, we've been in the data center and cloud hosting business, and it's I don't want to underestimate or undersell the importance of this shift from being able to budget, sort of thinking about CAPEX, projecting out spending and your needs, and being able to amortize that and kind of smooth what your spending looks like. You're actually kind of smoothing it from a financial perspective out over several years. In this shift to a variable spending consumption-based model and how big of an impact that has actually had on organizations. I think that's a really critical piece, that it's important for technologists, it's important for engineers to understand, because it's what's important to the CIO, the CTO, the executive team, throughout the organization. And I know when early in my career, when I was an engineer, I wasn't necessarily exposed to sometimes the financial decisions that were being made. They didn't make a lot of sense to me as an engineer. As I grew in my career, they started to make a lot more sense, because I realized that it was about financial planning. It was about financial health. It was about being able to look down the road and understand where you were going to be in a quarter, 2 quarters, a year, 2 years, because it's extremely important, especially for a publicly traded company, especially for a company that's moving towards some sort of equity event. But it's important for all organizations to know where they're going to be be able to predict where they're going to be. And so cloud has introduced this uncertainty in spending and in variable spending. Why have the financial teams allowed this? Why has the CFO allowed this to happen? What in the big change made it so that organizations wanted to shift to cloud?
Maybe just fear of, but being left behind, right? Another thing that happened over the pandemic is a lot of money went into new companies, startups, right? And these startups utilize this technology. And so a lot of organizations that maybe were financially holding back in the cloud have also realized that they can no longer afford to not have the ability to increase their speed of change, developing new products, whatever the case may be. They have a fear of being left behind and some other company coming up. I mean, Tesla's a great example, right? I mean, they're afraid some company's going to come up, right? And they don't have the ability to keep up with them. And then also, I think the CFOs, the financial organizations have realized that if you leverage the cloud in the right way, you can actually increase revenue and customer acquisition just by new product and feature, just by the velocity in which you can do new products and features, right? And so the wise organizations have realized that that not only can I keep up with my competition or even new competition from a rate of change perspective, but I can utilize the cloud to drive more revenue and growth for the organization.
Yeah, I think, my experiences back in the mid 2000s were that we were seeing higher and higher demand from the business to innovate. So just take a really simple example. Maybe the data transformation we need to do, or the data loading we need to do on massive data sets needed to happen faster, right? And so we needed to increase our velocity, and it was really hard. And I would even venture, having now experienced this for 20 plus years of a career in technology, it's impossible in some cases to create the sort of velocity necessary that the business demands in the old model, where I am buying hardware with a 3 to 5 year outlook. So if I buy that hardware, I have an outlook, I have a prediction from the business, and something fundamentally changes in the business, new customer, a new opportunity, maybe it's a new line of business. They come back that next year and say, well, great, I get that you just bought that technology that we're going to use for the next 3 years, but now I need it to do something 10 times faster. Well, you didn't buy that technology to do that 10 times faster. And so you are now stuck in a situation where you're having to outlay a bunch more capital in order to achieve that velocity. And that's honestly, that's not the velocity the business wants, because you got to go through all the normal procurement procedures and looking at vendors. It takes way too long.
Well, think about the opposite of that too, Nick. What if your projections were off by a factor of 3? And so you're a third of what you thought you were going to be. Then you've wasted a bunch of capital, right? So it's like it works. I mean, you remember, this was just really hard. It was, something like this, trying to guess what the growth was going to be for the next 12 months.
A thumb in the wind, for those who are watching it. A thumb in the wind.
Thumb in the wind.
So it's, and I think that the second piece of that is the innovation piece, where when you needed to innovate, I was in the data analytics space early to mid 2000s, especially in healthcare. This is before we were buying data warehouses, or before we were understanding that we needed to build quote unquote data lakes, right? And so we were looking to innovate, and to even start to innovate in that space to do what we needed to do, we had to make $1 million bet. Mm-hmm. And that is also a really hard thing to swallow, to say, I think this is the answer. If I do the math, I look at the performance of this hardware, and if I put this all together the correct way, I write the code the right way, I believe that I'm going to get this. You have to then lay out $1 million and make a bet. And if it was wrong, which, you and I are product people, we know that 7 to 10 of those bets are wrong.
Products always succeed.
If your knees are bent, you can do a lot more to make them succeed.
Yeah, right.
So,
you can make $1 million bets now
piece,
without spending a dime, just having functions ready to service your customer.
Well, and I think that's what's important to understand, is the innovation that AWS and Azure, Google, et cetera, brought us was the ability to buy the SIP, use something that before you had to lay out $1 million to even try to use, and you can pay pennies and dollars to try it, find out it does or doesn't do what you need it to do. You may still spend the $1 million, but you're getting to try it early and see if it actually does work.
And by the way, I
really
don't
fast.
have to go through purchasing, because I can just sign up for an account. I can put a corporate credit card. It's just eliminated the barriers to all of that, right? It's just a great way to, it was a brilliant model.
Yeah. So innovation and velocity, I think, are the two things that happened that caused this big change. Because I tell you, I felt that pressure running infrastructure engineering, working alongside some really innovative engineering teams. We felt that pressure to innovate. We felt that pressure for velocity, and it was hard to keep up if you didn't go to a cloud-based model. You had to go. You were being forced to go that way.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's why organizations have adopted the variable spending. But now we have this issue of accountability and variable spending, and so we need to address it. And that's what FinOps is really, how do we address that? So, Jason, I think let's touch on, what is FinOps? How does it solve this problem? How does it fill a gap that has been found?
It's a practice or a discipline, a set of processes that you can follow that enable organizations to get maximum value from cloud spending. And it does that by bringing together the stakeholders in cloud utilization and spending, right? Finance, engineering, technology, whatever the business units you have are. And it allows them to make better decisions on cloud spending that are data-driven. Instead of guesswork like our thumb in the wind from back in the CAPEX days, right? You can make sound data-driven decisions in the cloud if you have the right set of tools and processes and discipline internally to do so.
I agree. I think I'm going to break it down into a set of 3 bullets because I like to think that way. But let's start with the data-driven one because I think this is a really important
Absolutely.
one. We thought we were doing data-driven stuff 15 years ago, but it was data-driven only insofar as we could make a bunch of best guesses and try and project out 3 to 5
Spreadsheet
years.
magic.
Now we can make data-driven decisions in near real time, and that is extremely important, and it is honestly what the executive team wants, even if it's not always articulating it that way. So sometimes they're saying, "Hey, I need you to reduce cloud spending, or I need you to optimize. I need you to think about the impact on the business of whatever you're doing for XYZ product." But what they're really asking is, I need the data to understand: is this spending revenue aligned, or is this spending a project that we have going on, or is this spending waste that we need to eliminate? Data-driven decisions are extremely important. I think the second thing that you touched on there is real-time feedback. Like, it's this, we live in the world of needing real-time feedback, and financial decisions need that sort of real-time. I made a change, and I need to know the impact that it has on the environment.
Right.
So I think FinOps does that.
If I'm an organization, I want the individuals who have the greatest ability to affect cloud spend to understand the day-to-day decisions they make and how to understand the effect their decisions have on cloud spend. And I don't want them to know that 30 days after they do something. I want them to know that when they do something, because giving them that visibility allows them to make sure they're making the best decisions from day one. And where they make decisions that may not align with that, they get a chance to at least have the conversation about why they want to do things a certain way, even though it may not be the most optimal way.
Yes. Being an engineer, tell you this is very true. Engineers do not want to make mistakes. They do not want to do bad things. They do actually care about what they do, and they take a lot of pride in what they create. The closer you can bring real-time data around the outcomes of whatever an engineer did, the faster and more effective the engineer can resolve it and fix it. If you wait for 30 or 60 days for a review, guarantee the engineer has moved past it. That they're already 6 problems later trying to solve something when you're giving them that feedback. But give them that real-time data right away. If there's an issue that is created by the engineering team, they'll resolve it immediately. And we've seen this throughout my career. The closer you bring real-time data to the moment of impact for the engineering team, the faster and better they will resolve it.
In my experience, engineers, operations want to make better decisions in every aspect of their job. They just need the data to do so.
Right. Absolutely. And the third bullet I think we're touching on is we're bringing accountability. FinOps brings accountability back to the organization around variable spending.
And allows the organization to harness the power of the cloud.
That is the part that's ambiguous, right? There's a lot of accountability in a procurement procedure that I went out, I looked at these many vendors, I negotiated this discount, I found this deal and opportunity. It looks like this, it's going to do this for us over the next 3 to 5 years, and it looks like this. Well, there's accountability all along that process. Mm-hmm. Well, in the spending model of cloud, it can be very obfuscated as to who's accountable for what. And FinOps is bringing discipline back to that. So I think that's if you want to wrap on the 3 things of what is FinOps: brings accountability back to variable spending, creates real-time feedback for the engineers, and it enables data-driven decisions about the financial operations or financial impact of cloud spending.
Well said.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's it for today's episode. We're going to dive into FinOps as a topic throughout the next several episodes. You can see a theme here. Feel free to post your questions or send them over to us. Definitely check out tenacity.ai. Happy to help you on your FinOps journey, and make sure that we're bringing value to all of you. Thanks so much for listening.